After my husband's best friend passed away, his widow locked herself inside her apartment all day, overwhelmed with grief, refusing to step outside no matter what. This time, taking advantage of my husband being out of town on a business trip, I bought some pastries and quietly went to her place, intending to stay a few days to keep her company. Because I wanted to surprise her, I didn't call ahead and simply punched in the passcode to open the door. I never expected the scene before my eyes to leave me dead in my tracks. Late that afternoon, after getting off work at my real estate firm on Michigan Avenue, I had stopped by a small bakery near the entrance of our condo complex. The Chicago rain had just stopped, leaving the pavement slick with water, the headlights of passing cars stretching into long, cold streaks. I originally only planned to buy a slice of strawberry cheesecake for myself, as a little treat after a day full of stressful meetings. But as the cashier boxed it up, for some reason, I thought of Chloe. She lived in the adjacent tower, and was the widow of my husband's late best friend. Her husband, Tom, had passed away while saving my husband, Michael, in a tragic car accident. Since that day, Michael always told me he owed his life to their family, so he occasionally went over to help Chloe fix the plumbing, repair the electrical wiring, carry heavy boxes, or build shelves. At first, I felt profound sympathy for her. A young woman, widowed early, living quietly in an older apartment with her elderly father-in-law, it was heartbreaking, no matter how you looked at it. Because of this, whenever I bought something delicious, I always got an extra portion to send over. I used to believe my kindness was the right thing to do. I used to believe my husband was a man of honor and gratitude. I used to believe that if there was a boundary between a man and a woman called morality, Michael would never cross it. Thinking like this, I asked the cashier to pack another box. Holding 2 bakery boxes still smelling of sweet vanilla cream, I drove back to our condo complex. My home was in Tower A, while Chloe lived in Tower C. They were less than a 5-minute walk apart. Because it was damp and still drizzling that day, I drove my car down into the basement garage of her building instead. I didn't call ahead, partly because I just wanted to drop off the cake on my way home, and partly because Chloe often texted me saying she was lonely at home and anyone could drop by any time. I stepped out of the elevator. The hallway of Tower C was strangely silent. The yellow lights cast a glow on the polished tiles, and there was a faint, familiar smell of pine sol. Chloe's apartment was at the very end of the hall. As I walked, I wondered what to cook for Michael tonight. Maybe a pot roast with a side of roasted vegetables. He had been complaining of fatigue lately, and I wanted to take better care of him. Arriving at the door, I knocked lightly 3 times. Inside, there was a very faint noise, like the sound of a chair being hastily pushed back. I thought Chloe was resting and was about to call out, but the door suddenly swung open. The person standing behind the door was not Chloe. It was Michael, my husband. He was wearing the white dress shirt I had ironed for him this morning, but the collar was slightly skewed. The top buttons were undone. His forehead was dotted with sweat, and his annoyed expression instantly froze the moment he saw me. "Who is it?" His voice choked the second he spoke. He looked at the 2 cake boxes in my hands, then at my face, his complexion changing rapidly. "Sarah, why are you here?" That question didn't sound like the greeting of a husband accidentally bumping into his wife. It sounded like an interrogation, as if I were the intruder who had no right to be there. I stood still for a few seconds, looking him up and down before slightly furrowing my brows. "I came to bring some cake for Chloe. And you? What are you doing at her place at this hour?" Michael looked briefly flustered. He ran a hand through his hair, glanced quickly back into the apartment, and said in a dry voice, "Oh, Chloe had a leaky garbage disposal under her sink. She called me over to take a look. It was just a minor fix." If it had been before, I definitely would have believed him immediately, because his coming over to help Chloe had happened many times, and he always told me about it clearly, because I never thought the man who shared my bed could hide such a filthy secret behind that decent facade. I nodded, intending to hand the cake box to him. "Then please take this inside for her." But before I could even extend my hand, the soft shuffling of house shoes echoed from behind Michael. A delicate, whiny female voice called out, "Michael, who is it?" Chloe stepped out. She was wearing a loose beige nightgown, her hair tied loosely at the nape of her neck, her face as pale as if she had just been startled. What made me freeze was not her panicked expression, but the hand she was resting on her stomach. Her lower abdomen was clearly protruding, and it couldn't possibly be due to weight gain. I looked down at that belly, then up at Michael's face. The air in the hallway suddenly turned freezing cold. A thought as sharp as a knife slashed through my mind. but I forced my voice to remain calm. Chloe, you're pregnant. Chloe's face instantly turned ashen. She hid half her body behind Michael's back, her eyes welling up with tears as if I had just bullied her. Michael pressed his lips together and said nothing. It was that very silence that made my heart sink. Right at that moment, the shuffling of slippers echoed from inside the apartment again. My mother-in-law, Diane, walked out of the kitchen, holding a bowl of hot chicken noodle soup in her hands. She walked and spoke in an anxious tone. Michael, help Chloe back inside. Standing too long isn't good for my grandson. After saying that, she looked up and saw me. Her entire face stiffened, the soup in her bowl sloshed, and a few drops spilled onto the floor. In just one brief moment, all clumsy explanations became redundant. My grandson. Those two words felt like a direct slap to my face. I looked at my husband, looked at the woman holding her belly behind his back, and then looked at my mother-in-law standing inside Chloe's apartment, as if it were her own home. It turned out the last person to know the truth was me. Diane looked panicked for a fleeting second, but very quickly, her panic turned into coldness. She slammed the bowl of soup down on the entryway table, stepped toward the door, and lifted her chin to look at me. Since you've already seen it, I won't hide it anymore. The baby in Chloe's belly is Michael's. This family cannot be left without an heir just because you can't give birth. I heard every single word clearly, yet my ears were ringing. The years I gritted my teeth and endured the passive-aggressive remarks, the bitter herbal supplements my mother-in-law forced me to drink, the times I bowed my head and swallowed all the humiliation to save face for my husband. All of it felt like someone had just thrown it into the mud. I let out a very soft laugh, but my chest hurt so much I could barely breathe. Michael looked at me, his eyes evasive yet annoyed. Sarah, since things have come to this, just calm down and listen to me. I just wanted a child. I gripped the 2 cake boxes in my hands so tightly that the cardboard bent. It turned out my kindness had nourished a profound betrayal. It turned out the man I loved so much that I accepted the stigma of being infertile was now using that very wound to stab me in the back. And in that moment, looking at the belly that his entire family was treasuring like a jewel, I suddenly remembered the medical test results from years ago, still hidden deep in my nightstand drawer. The person who couldn't have children was never me. That person was Michael. I looked at Michael for a long time, so long that he began to lose patience. The man who used to hold me on rainy nights, who used to say that as long as we were peacefully together, it was enough, was now standing like a shield in front of another woman, protecting the fetus he believed was his own flesh and blood. And my mother-in-law stood there, her gaze sharp as a knife, as if I were the one at fault for refusing to bow my head and accept this filthy arrangement. I asked very slowly, "How long have you known about this, Diane?" Diane crossed her arms over her chest, her voice icy. "Since the moment Chloe got pregnant. Let me speak plainly. Since you can't give birth, you need to know your place. Michael is my only son. This family cannot be left without someone to carry on our legacy." Chloe's eyes brimmed with tears, her hand still cradling her belly, looking so fragile that if I hadn't seen everything with my own eyes, I might have felt sorry for her. "Sarah, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to steal Michael from you. I just wanted a child so I'd have someone to lean on in the future. Tom is gone, and I am truly so lonely." I burst out laughing. My laughter echoed in the narrow hallway, dry and bitter. "You were lonely, so you slept with my husband. You wanted someone to lean on, so you let my entire in-law family hide this from me. Chloe, you make it sound so innocent." Michael scowled. "Sarah, don't use such harsh words. Chloe is a victim of circumstance too. Tom died saving me. I couldn't just abandon her." "You couldn't abandon her, so you got her pregnant?" My words choked him. Diane immediately interjected. "Don't overreact. Men make mistakes sometimes, and women need to be forgiving. Besides, the child will still call you Mom. Michael and I have already discussed it. Once the baby is born, we'll bring him home for you to raise. Everyone outside will think you gave birth to him. That way, you get the reputation of being a mother. What do you have to lose?" I looked at her, waves of disgust rising in my throat. It turned out they didn't just betray me. They wanted to use me as a human shield to cover up their sins. They wanted me to raise a child born from my husband and his mistress, and they wanted me to keep the title of the official wife just to save face for their family. I placed the 2 cake boxes down on the shoe cabinet near the door. The strawberry cheesecake boxes were crushed, the cream inside likely ruined, exactly like the last shred of affection left in my heart at this moment. "Michael, do you think the same way?" He avoided my eyes but still tried to speak in a self-righteous tone. "I did this for our family too. All these years, I've never blamed you for our childlessness. Now we have a solution, so stop being selfish. I felt as if my chest was being crushed. All these years, he had never blamed me. No, he never said it out loud, because he knew perfectly well that he was the one with the medical issue. Yet he let his mother humiliate me to death, let me gag down bitter herbal teas until I vomited, and let the relatives look at me with pitying eyes. I, out of love for him, terrified of wounding his pride, had suffered it all in silence. I raised my head, my voice turning ice cold. Let's get a divorce. The three people in front of me froze. Chloe was the first to react. A very quick flash of joy sparked in her eyes before she immediately lowered her head to hide it. Diane scoffed. Divorce is fine by me. A barren woman like you is just taking up space in my house anyway. Michael frowned. Sarah, don't use divorce to threaten me. I'm not threatening you. Tomorrow, we go to the courthouse to file the paperwork. As for the assets, the condo is in both our names. So is the car. Since you're the one having an affair, you should know exactly how you need to walk away. Diane's face instantly changed color. Are you dreaming? That condo belongs to my son. The car was bought by my son. You lived a life of luxury in our house all these years, and now you want to bleed us dry? I looked at her, spitting out every word clearly. You're mistaken, Diane. The mortgage on this condo was primarily paid from my salary. I also made the vast majority of the car payments. Your son's monthly salary is barely half of mine. Where do you get the confidence to say your son provided for me? Michael turned bright red, equal parts embarrassed and furious. Sarah, do you really have to be this ruthless? Ruthless? I looked straight into his eyes. You brought another woman into your bed. You got her pregnant. You let your mother humiliate me. And then you wanted me to raise that child under my own name. Between the two of us, who exactly is the ruthless one? The hallway was dead silent. Chloe bit her lip and clung to Michael's arm. Michael, if Sarah won't accept it, then never mind. I don't want to put you in a difficult position because of me. Her words were soft, but her hand gripped his arm tightly, refusing to let go. Michael looked at me, his gaze gradually turning frigid. Fine. If you want a divorce, we'll get a divorce. Don't regret this later. I smiled, though tears were welling up in the corners of my eyes. The person who should regret this is not me. After saying that, I turned around and walked straight toward the elevator. The metal doors closed, separating me from the three hypocritical faces behind them. As the elevator descended, I finally realized my hands were trembling uncontrollably. But in the midst of that heart-shattering pain, a cold thought emerged very clearly. That fetus absolutely could not be Michael's child. And if they wanted to put on a play about a happy family, I was going to keep my eyes wide open and watch until that theater curtain tore itself apart right in front of everyone. Returning to my apartment, I stood before the door for a long time before I gathered enough strength to put the key in the lock. The house was still brightly lit. On the dining table lay the pale blue tablecloth I had picked out myself for our anniversary last year. Everything was heartbreakingly familiar. Michael's loafers were still neatly placed by the door. The jacket he wore often was still draped over the back of the chair. The water glass he drank from this morning was still sitting next to the sink. Just a few hours ago, this place was still our home. And now, every single object in the apartment felt as if it were mocking my stupidity. I put my purse down on the chair and walked straight into the bedroom. The moment the closet door opened, the familiar scent of fabric softener rushed at me, making my eyes sting. Inside the closet, Michael's dress shirts were still hanging alongside my dresses, as if we were still a normal married couple. I reached up and violently yanked one of his shirts down, but by the time it was in my hands, all my strength suddenly vanished. I slumped to the floor, hugging that shirt, crying soundlessly. I wasn't mourning the man who betrayed me. I was mourning the years I spent believing he was a good person. I was mourning the times he held me and said that it didn't matter if we didn't have kids, he only needed me. I was mourning how I had endured every criticism just because of that one sentence. When his mother forced me to drink herbal medicine, I drank it. When his relatives asked when we would have good news, I smiled and brushed it off. When outsiders gossiped that I was an incomplete woman, I stayed silent. I thought I was protecting our love. It turned out I was just turning myself into a laughingstock for his entire family. Enough crying. I stood up and wiped my tears clean. I opened the bottom drawer of the nightstand. Inside was an old manila envelope, the edges of the paper slightly yellowed. It was the result of Michael's reproductive health exam from years ago. I had hidden it like a wound I never wanted anyone to touch. Back then, the doctor explicitly stated Michael's chances of conceiving naturally were virtually zero. That day, I stood in the hospital corridor, holding that piece of paper, my whole body turning icy cold. I thought that if I told the truth, he would be devastated. So I chose to take all the blame upon myself. Looking back now, I only saw how pathetically laughable I had been. My phone buzzed. It was Michael calling. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. Sarah, have you calmed down yet? His voice still carried that arrogant tone of someone granting forgiveness. What do you want? I've thought about it. Let's not make things too ugly with the assets. After all our years of marriage, I don't want you to walk away empty-handed. I'll leave you a sum of money as a gesture of goodwill. I let out a cold laugh. You'll leave me a sum of money? Michael, did you forget who paid the lion's share for this condo? He was silent for a few seconds before lowering his voice. Don't let your anger make you petty. You still have to live your life. A divorced woman who can't even have kids won't find a decent man easily. That sentence was the final drop that made the glass overflow. I looked at the medical test results in my hand, my fingers gripping them so tightly my knuckles turned white. Tomorrow morning at 9:00 a.m., meet me at the lawyer's office. If you don't show up, I'll send all the evidence of your affair to your company's HR department and to all our relatives. Michael gritted his teeth. You dare threaten me? I am simply taking back what belongs to me. With that, I hung up. Immediately, Diane called. I ignored it. She sent a barrage of text messages, every single one venomous, calling me ungrateful, saying a barren woman demanding property was greedy, claiming no one would ever want to look at me again. I read every word, and my heart no longer hurt like it did at first. All that remained was a chill that seeped into my bones. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in front of my laptop, organizing bank statements, the condo purchasing contract, car loan documents, and text messages showing Michael frequently visiting Chloe. I even saved the voice recording of our recent phone call. Every piece of evidence was placed in its own folder. The more I worked, the clearer my mind became. I was no longer the wife sitting and crying in the dark. I had to walk out of this marriage with my head held high. Near dawn, I texted Jessica, a lawyer friend from my company. She called back immediately. Sarah, are you absolutely sure you want to divorce? I looked toward the window. The Chicago sky was still gray, but in the distance, a thin streak of light was emerging behind the skyscrapers. I'm sure. I won't be soft-hearted this time. At 9:00 a.m. the next day, I arrived at the lawyer's office 10 minutes early. I wore a tailored black pantsuit, my hair tied neatly at the nape of my neck, my face lightly made up but unable to completely hide the dark circles under my eyes. I had been awake almost all night, but looking at myself in the mirror, I told myself that no matter how shattered my heart was, today I would not let anyone see me weak. Jessica opened the conference room door and placed a prepared file in front of me. I reviewed the documents you sent. If the other side doesn't want to go to court, they had better sign the settlement. The evidence of the affair is rock solid, and the joint assets clearly show a much higher financial contribution from you. I nodded, my hand resting on the slightly cold folder. I don't want to drag this out, but if they get too greedy, I will take this all the way. Jessica looked at me with a mix of sympathy and sternness. Don't give in. These people plan to bring his illegitimate child home for you to raise, under the guise of it being your biological child. That means they no longer view you as a human being, just an empty shell to cover up their scandal. Those words made my heart sting. She was right. The most painful part wasn't just Michael's betrayal. The chilling part was that his entire family had sat together and plotted how to turn me into a human shield. They wanted to use my kindness, my legal status, and my silence to protect their reputation. About 10 minutes later, the conference room door swung open. Michael walked in first, followed by Diane and Chloe. Chloe was wearing a loose maternity dress, her hands resting on her belly, looking as victimized and frail as ever. Diane ground her teeth the moment she saw me, while Michael stopped dead in his tracks, seeing the lawyer beside me. You really brought a lawyer? I looked at him calmly. Did you think I was joking? Diane slammed her handbag onto the table. Don't think hiring a lawyer scares my family. You lived with my son for years, enjoying a great life. And now that you can't give birth, you want to split our assets? Don't you have any shame? Before Jessica could speak, I raised my head and looked straight at her. The person who should feel shame is the one who brought her son's mistress to discuss her legal daughter-in-law's divorce settlement. Chloe's face turned stark white. She bit her lip, and tears instantly spilled over. Sarah, I know you hate me, but please don't talk about Michael like that. He and I came together under very special circumstances. I never wanted to hurt you. I gave a faint smile. You didn't want to hurt me, yet you got pregnant with my husband. Chloe, stop acting. There is no audience here to applaud you. Michael furrowed his brow, pulling Chloe behind him. Sarah, you're getting more bitter by the minute. Chloe is pregnant. Don't upset her. Watching his protective stance, my heart grew strangely calm. In the past, when Diane pointed in my face and scolded me for being barren, he stood right there. Yet he had never protected me like this. It turned out men are perfectly capable of protecting women. It just depends on whether that woman is someone they actually want to protect. Jessica pushed the divorce settlement toward Michael. Michael, this is the asset division agreement. The condo and the car will go to Sarah. The savings accumulated during the marriage will be divided based on actual financial contributions. If you do not agree, we'll file for litigation and present evidence of infidelity and intentional concealment of an extramarital affair. Michael picked up the paper, his face darkening after just a few lines. The condo goes to her, the car goes to her. What do I have left? I answered calmly. You still have Chloe and the child you've been desperately hoping for. Diane immediately shrieked. No way! Michael is used to living in that condo. And Chloe is about to give birth. She needs a stable home. Are you trying to throw my grandson out on the street? I tilted my head and looked at her. Your grandson is your responsibility. What does that have to do with me? Diane was trembling with rage, pointing her finger right at my face. You truly are a wicked woman. You can't have kids, so you're jealous of someone who can. When you get old with no one to care for you, don't come crawling back begging our family. I stood up, pulled a bank statement out of my bag, and slammed it onto the table. You said your son provided for me. Then take a good look. For the past 3 years, the condo mortgage, the HOA fees, the car insurance, the furniture, the vast majority of it, came straight out of my checking account. As for how much your son makes and how much he blows on personal expenses, I'm sure he knows perfectly well. Michael turned beet red, ashamed and furious. Sarah, do you really have to humiliate me in front of outsiders? I looked at him, my voice very soft. You pushed me to this point, and you still care about losing face? The room went dead silent. Chloe tugged at Michael's sleeve, speaking softly but loud enough for me to hear. Michael, just sign it. We'll have a child soon. We can start over. I don't need a big house. I just need you to love me, and our baby. Those words sounded noble, but her eyes quickly darted toward the settlement agreement. I could clearly see the calculation in her gaze. She wanted Michael to sign quickly so he could marry her and give her baby a legitimate name. And Michael, driven by a wounded ego, actually picked up the pen. Fine. I'll sign. Sarah, don't regret this later. The stroke of his pen pressed hard into the paper. The moment the final signature was placed, I thought I would be in unbearable pain. But strangely, I only felt a profound relief. As if a noose that had been tightening around my neck for years had finally been cut. Diane was still hurling insults, Michael was still glaring at me with resentment, and Chloe was still cradling her belly, feigning weakness, but none of them had anything to do with me anymore. Leaving the lawyer's office, I went straight to the basement parking garage. As the elevator doors closed, I looked at my reflection on the cold metal. My eyes were red, my lips trembling slightly, but my back was straight. I told myself that this marriage was over, but their theatrical play was not. The fetus in Chloe's belly would grow, and the truth would eventually breach the surface. And when that time came, I wanted to see what kind of face Michael would have when confronting the child he was treating like a treasure. I got back to the apartment when the afternoon sun was fading. The late-day light streamed through the balcony glass, casting a pale yellow streak on the hardwood floor. This place used to be the nest I poured my heart into building. Every little corner had my touch. The living room curtains I picked out, the dishware in the cabinets I bought, even the potted pothos plant by the window that I brought home after Michael complained the house lacked greenery. Yet now, this home suddenly felt alien, like a theater stage after the play had ended, leaving only fake props sitting silently in the cold light. I changed my shoes and went straight to the bedroom, pulled out large suitcases, and began packing Michael's belongings. Dress shirts, ties, watches, shaving razors, and the books he bought but never finished reading. Everything was tossed into cardboard boxes. At first, my hands were shaking, but the more I packed, the calmer my heart became. Every item thrown out of the closet, felt like a rotting piece of memory being uprooted from my heart. When I pulled open the bottom drawer, I saw the velvet ring box. His wedding ring was sitting right inside. It turned out the man had taken off his ring a long time ago without me ever noticing. I picked up the box and let out a soft laugh. Love sometimes doesn't die in a massive argument, but from tiny details like this, it's just that the people involved intentionally choose to look the other way. The doorbell rang frantically. I didn't even need to check the ring camera to know who it was. The moment I opened the door, Diane barged in like she owned the place. Behind her was Michael, his face heavy. "What are you doing with my son's things?" I pointed toward the sealed cardboard boxes. "I packed for him. Move it all out today." Michael looked at the progressively emptying room, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Perhaps it was only at this moment he truly realized I wasn't making empty threats. This marriage was over, and he no longer had the right to step into my life like before. "Sarah, do you really have to take it this far?" I looked at him with a calmness that surprised even me. "Didn't you already sign the papers?" "Stop talking to me like we are still married," Diane snarled. "Don't think you're so clever just because you got the condo. A woman with no children can have a mansion, but she'll still be crying alone in bed. Soon you'll see that someone with a grandchild to hold, like me, is the real winner." I turned to her and smiled. "Then hold on tight to that victory of yours. I just hope that in the future, it turns out to be an actual victory." Diane froze, frowning. "What do you mean by that?" I didn't answer. Some truths ruin the fun if revealed too early. Michael stared at me, seemingly trying to find something in my eyes, but all he saw was a freezing emptiness, stripped of any lingering affection. He bent down to pick up a box, his voice hardening. "Mom, let's go. Stop talking." Before leaving, he turned to look at me. "Don't regret this later. Chloe is sweet and is about to give me a child. I believe you will eventually understand. Women fighting for dominance ultimately can't compare to having a complete family." I shut the door right in his face before his last word finished. The footsteps in the hallway faded away. The apartment returned to silence. I leaned against the door and let out a long breath. A complete family? A family built on betrayal, lies, and a highly questionable pregnancy. How long could it possibly remain complete? 2 days later, I took several bags of old clothes down to the lobby to donate to the Condo Association's charity drive. As I stepped out of the elevator in Tower C, I accidentally spotted Chloe in the courtyard garden behind the building. She wasn't alone. Beside her was Robert, her former father-in-law, a man over 70, his back slightly hunched, his hair almost entirely gray. What made me freeze was that Chloe was linking arms with him very closely. Her head was leaning against his shoulder, her expression coquettish, nothing like a daughter-in-law caring for her father-in-law. Robert placed his hand on her pregnant belly, his eyes filled with a bizarrely affectionate tenderness. Chloe smiled, a soft and deeply intimate smile, then quickly looked around as if terrified of being caught. I stood behind a tall, decorative palm tree, my entire body going cold. The fragments of suspicion in my mind suddenly pieced together into a terrifyingly clear picture. Michael couldn't have children. The baby in Chloe's belly definitely wasn't his. But if the man beside her was Robert, if that gaze wasn't familial, if her panic whenever DNA testing was mentioned wasn't baseless, then this secret was infinitely filthier than I had ever imagined. I quietly took out my phone but then lowered it. Now was not the time. A single photo right now would only give them a chance to deny everything. I needed to let the truth grow on its own, just like the belly they were cherishing day by day. When the child was born, when its facial features became clear, when the entire condo complex started gossiping, that was when this play would reach its absolute climax. I turned and walked away, the corner of my lips curling up in a cold smirk. Michael thought he had won because he was about to be a father. He had no idea that the very thing he was joyfully welcoming might be the hardest slap he would ever receive in his life. I left the courtyard, my footsteps still feeling a bit heavy. Not because I was heartbroken for Michael, but because the truth before my eyes was utterly repulsive. Chloe had stood before me crying, saying she just wanted a child to rely on after her husband died. She had hidden behind Michael, pretending to be frail, as if the whole world were bullying her. Yet, in an obscure corner of this complex, her true colors were exposed so clearly that I needed no further explanation. I got into my car and sat in silence for a long time before starting the engine. The warning lights in the parking garage blinked coldly, reflecting on the windshield. My face looked both exhausted and wide awake. This marriage was over, but the filth it left behind still refused to let me go. My phone suddenly rang. It was my mom. Seeing the word mom on the screen, my throat tightened. For the past few days, I still hadn't dared to tell her about the divorce. Since the day my dad betrayed her and left with another woman, my mom had raised me all by herself. She used to warn me that a woman getting married shouldn't fear poverty. She should only fear marrying a man with no conscience. Yet, in the end, I still went down the exact same path that had broken her heart all those years ago. I picked up the phone, trying to keep my voice normal. "Hi, Mom." Her gentle voice came through. "Sarah, are you and Michael coming over for dinner this weekend? I got some great cuts of beef. I'm making that pot roast Michael loves." I gripped the steering wheel tightly. Just a normal question, but it almost made my tears spill over. "Mom, can I come over to your place later? I have something to tell you." The other end was silent for a few seconds. Perhaps my mom caught the anomaly in my tone. "Okay, come on over. I'll be waiting." I drove out to her small house in the quiet suburb of Oak Park. She was already standing by the front porch, her hair grayer than I remembered. The moment she saw me step out of the car, she didn't ask anything. She just reached out and touched my face. Her hand was warm but trembling slightly. "You've lost weight." Just those 3 words. The hard shell I had forced myself to wear over the past few days instantly cracked. I walked into the house, sat down on the old wooden chair, and told her everything. From bringing the cake to Chloe's place, seeing Michael there, the pregnancy, my mother-in-law, the divorce settlement, to discovering Chloe's intimacy with Robert. I spoke very slowly, trying not to cry. But the more I spoke, the more choked up my voice became. My mom sat across from me, her hands clenched so tightly her veins bulged. When she heard that for all these years, the truly infertile one was Michael, and that I had taken all the blame for him, she burst into tears. "You foolish girl. Why did you suffer all alone like that? Why didn't you tell me?" I lowered my head, tears falling onto the back of my hands. "I was afraid you'd be sad. I was also afraid of hurting his pride. I thought if I just endured it a little, our home would be at peace." My mom stood up and hugged me. The familiar scent of her Vicks Vapo Rub and cotton clothes made me bawl like a child. So much resentment, so much humiliation, so many nights lying next to Michael yet feeling profoundly lonely. Finally, I had a place to let it all out. My mom stroked my hair, her voice choked but firm. "Cry it out. But after you cry, you have to live with dignity. Don't ever look back. A man who lets his wife bear his shame and then betrays her, he is not worth your regret." I nodded in my mother's embrace. That evening, my mom made me a bowl of hot soup. I ate spoonful by spoonful, feeling the turmoil in my heart soothe just a bit. Right then, my phone screen lit up. A text from an unknown number. "Sarah, I know you are very angry, but please don't make things hard for Michael anymore. My baby and I just need a peaceful home." I looked at those words, a cold sneer forming on my lips. Chloe was still acting. She wanted me to walk away cleanly, wanted to take everything without paying a price. I replied with exactly one sentence. "Keep a tight grip on that peaceful home, and try not to be the one who brings the roof down on your own head." Then I blocked the number. My mom looked at me, her eyes filled with worry. "What are you going to do?" I put the phone down, my voice completely calm. "I am not going to do anything. I will just wait. Some secrets don't need to be exposed by anyone. They'll rot and fall apart all on their own." I slept at my mom's house that night. For the first time in days, I no longer felt the emptiness of my apartment swallowing me whole. But before drifting off to sleep, the image of Chloe leaning on Robert's shoulder resurfaced. I knew that pregnancy would eventually become the fire that burned down everyone who had laughed at my pain. The next morning, I left my mom's house while the sun was barely up. She pressed a thermos of hot coffee and some fresh apples into my hands, repeatedly reminding me not to skip meals and never to suffer alone again. I hugged her tightly at the door, feeling both warm and heartbroken. It turned out, after all the promises that made me believe in marriage, the only person who truly stood by my side was my mother. On my way to the office, I called David, the regional director of my corporation. He had previously offered me a position to manage a new branch in San Diego, but at the time, I declined because I didn't want to be away from Michael. Thinking back now, I realized I had passed up so many opportunities for a man who wasn't worth it. "David, is that offer you mentioned last time still on the table?" The other end was silent for a moment before he chuckled. "Sarah? I thought you'd never agree to leave Chicago because of your husband." I looked at the line of traffic ahead of me, my voice perfectly level. "I am getting a divorce. If the company still needs someone, I want to take the position. David didn't pry. He just lowered his voice. I'm very sorry about your personal life, but honestly, your skills have deserved this position for a long time. Give me a week to arrange things. Start preparing your handovers. Hanging up, I felt my heart lighten significantly. For the first time in years, a decision of mine didn't revolve around Michael. I didn't have to wonder if he would be sad or if his mother would be pleased. I was finally starting to live for myself again. At noon, I met my mom at the mall to buy some new clothes to prepare for San Diego. She said a woman going through a breakup needs to dress beautifully, not to prove anything to anyone, but to remind herself that she is still worthy of love. I linked arms with her, walking through the brightly lit shopping center. I was trying on a cream-colored pantsuit when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Sarah, did you follow me here? I turned around. Michael was standing a few feet away, Chloe by his side, holding her belly. Diane was walking right behind them, carrying bags of newborn baby clothes, her face beaming as if she had conquered the world. The moment she saw me, she sneered. Oh, look who it is. What's the point of a barren woman buying pretty clothes? You can dress up all you want, but you still couldn't keep a husband. My mom's face immediately darkened. She stepped forward, blocking me, her voice not loud but sharp as ice. Watch your mouth. My daughter divorced your son because he had an affair, not because she couldn't keep anyone. When a man is rotten to the core, keeping him just dirties your hands. Diane turned bright red. Who are you to butt into my family's business? My mom laughed coldly. I am the mother of the daughter your family humiliated for years. Only today do I see that it wasn't my daughter who was unlucky. She was incredibly blessed to escape a family with absolutely zero shame. People nearby began to stare. Chloe hurriedly grabbed Michael's arm, tears already pooling in her eyes. Michael, let's go. I don't want Sarah to misunderstand and think we are intentionally flaunting our happiness in front of her. Watching her fake benevolent act, I almost laughed out loud. She claimed she didn't want to flaunt, yet her hand rested prominently on her belly, intentionally caressing it as if terrified I wouldn't see. Seeing this, Michael became even more protective. Sarah, I know it bothers you to see Chloe pregnant, but it's in the past. Stop living in jealousy. The more you act like this, the more I realize divorcing you was the right choice. I looked at him and replied softly, rest assured, I have never felt my decision was more right than I do at this very moment. I turned to the sales associate and handed her my credit card. I'll take this suit, plus the 2 others I tried on earlier. Diane scoffed. Spending money so recklessly. A divorced woman who doesn't know how to save. When you're old with no husband and no kids, who's going to take care of you? I took my card back and smiled at her. At least I'm spending my own money. You, on the other hand, should hold on to your money very carefully to buy formula for your grandson. Raising a child is expensive, especially when he might not look anything like you think he will. The smile on Chloe's face stiffened. The hand on her belly gave a slight twitch. Michael frowned. What nonsense are you spewing now? I shrugged. Just wishing you a happy fatherhood. With that, I linked arms with my mom and walked away. After a few steps, my mom asked quietly, What did you mean by what you just said? I glanced back at the glass window reflecting Chloe, who was panicking and looking back at me. My heart was as cold as ice. Nothing, Mom. I just see someone holding a live bomb in their hands, mistakenly believing it's a treasure. That evening, I started packing my luggage. With my large suitcase open on the floor, I neatly folded my new clothes inside. I didn't know what San Diego had waiting for me, but I knew for certain that there would be no apartment with Chloe in it, no contemptuous glares from Diane, and no man who used my love as a shield for his betrayal. Before going to bed, I received a text from Michael. The more you pretend to be indifferent, the more I know you still love me. I stared at those words, finding them completely laughable. There are people who go their entire lives without understanding that a woman's silence is not always her waiting. Sometimes, it is just a final period at the end of a sentence. The day I left Chicago, it was drizzling. My gray suitcase sat by the door. The only things left in the house were the things that truly belonged to me. All traces of Michael had been cleared out. Yet, for some reason, as I locked the door, I still felt a slight twinge in my chest. Not because I missed him, but because I pitied the version of myself from those past years. The woman who used to stand in this kitchen cooking and waiting for her husband, who smiled when he praised her pot roast, who thought that if she just endured enough, The family would be at peace. That woman had ultimately died a silent death on a late afternoon outside another woman's door. I rolled my suitcase into the hallway, unexpectedly running into Michael and Chloe stepping out of the elevator. Chloe was wearing a pale pink maternity dress, one hand supporting her back, the other holding Michael's arm. Seeing my suitcase, she immediately put on a gentle smile, though her eyes couldn't hide her smugness. "Are you really moving away, Sarah? I thought you were just saying that." I locked the door, replying evenly. "Where I go is none of your business." Michael looked at the suitcase, his voice suddenly deepening. "Are you really going to San Diego? Throwing away everything familiar just because you're mad at me?" I looked at him, feeling more amused than angry. "You overestimate yourself. I am leaving for work, for my future. You are no longer important enough to make me run away." His face stiffened. Chloe quickly tugged at his arm, speaking softly. "Michael, if she wants to leave, let her go. Maybe getting away from here will make it easier for her to forget you." I glanced at her. That tone of fake pity made me nauseous. But today, I didn't want to waste another word on her. I pulled my suitcase past them. Right at that moment, the door to Chloe's apartment cracked open. Robert stepped out, leaning on his cane. The way he looked at Chloe contained a hint of awkwardness that was very hard to conceal. Chloe immediately dropped Michael's arm, turning to call out, "Dad, why did you come out? Go back inside and rest. I bought some soup for you." Robert looked at her pregnant belly, his gaze softening significantly. "I just wanted to see if you were home yet." The way he spoke sounded ordinary, but his eyes were not those of a father-in-law looking at his daughter-in-law. Michael seemed to notice something too. He frowned, looking at Robert, then at Chloe. Chloe instantly forced a laugh, cradling her belly and complaining, "Michael, I'm a bit tired. I think I've been standing too long." As expected, the moment she acted weak, Michael immediately forgot the flash of suspicion in his mind. He supported her, his voice anxious. "Let's go inside. You're pregnant, don't overexert yourself." I stood by the elevator, coldly watching the scene. It's true what they say. When someone wants to be deceived, even if the truth slaps them in the face, they'll find an excuse to close their eyes. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped inside. Before the doors completely shut, I saw Robert still staring after Chloe, while Chloe kept her head down, avoiding my eyes. In that split second, I knew she was terrified. Not terrified that I still loved Michael, but terrified that I had seen something I shouldn't have. Walking out into the complex courtyard, I bumped into Pam, my neighbor. She looked at my suitcase and sighed. "You're really leaving? I heard about what happened." "I'm so sorry, sweetie, but leaving is for the best. This place has gotten so noisy lately because of their family." I smiled faintly. "I'm just changing my work environment." Pam lowered her voice. "I'll tell you the truth, but don't be upset. Lately, a lot of people have noticed Chloe and Robert acting a bit too close. At first, everyone thought it was just a daughter-in-law taking care of her father-in-law. But the more you watch, the weirder it looks. I just hope Michael wakes up soon, or he's going to become the laughingstock of the entire building." I zipped up my purse, my voice calm. There are some things outsiders see first, but the people involved are the absolute last to know. Pam looked at me as if she wanted to ask more, but instead just patted my hand. "Have a good life out there. Don't let them ruin your faith in people." I nodded and stepped into my Uber. As the car rolled out of the condo complex gates, I looked back at the towering building one last time. The balcony of my old apartment slowly disappeared behind the rain-soaked trees. That place once trapped me in a beautiful but deceptive dream of a marriage. Now, I was leaving not because I had lost, but because I refused to stand in their mud for another second. Arriving at the airport, I received a text from Jessica, my lawyer. "The paperwork is finalized. The condo and the car will be transferred to your name per the settlement. Focus on your new job and don't worry." I stared at the message and finally let out a sigh of relief. At the exact same time, Michael sent me an ultrasound photo, along with a short text. "This is my son. Someday you will understand what you threw away." I looked at the photo for a moment, then locked the screen. The very thing he was bragging about today was highly likely to become his most agonizing piece of evidence tomorrow. The plane took off, the city below me shrinking away. I leaned my head against the seat and closed my eyes. Ahead of me was San Diego, a new job, and a new life. Left behind was Michael and Chloe's theatrical play, still ongoing. They just didn't know that the stage curtains had already begun rotting from the inside out. San Diego welcomed me with golden sunshine and the salty scent of the ocean breeze. On my first day at the new branch, I told myself I must not wear the face of someone who had just crawled out of a broken home. I wore the cream pantsuit my mom had picked out, put on my heels, held the project files in my hands, and walked into the conference room as if all the wounds on my back had been locked away. David introduced me to the team, announcing that from today onward, I would be managing client development and coordinating the coastal resort project. The eyes in the room looking at me held curiosity and skepticism, but I didn't shy away. I had lived for years under my mother-in-law's contemptuous glare, had stood amidst betrayal without collapsing, so a little office gossip couldn't scare me anymore. The first week flew by in a whirlwind of work. I arrived at the office early and returned to my rented apartment only when the city lights were on. Some nights, standing on my balcony looking at the Coronado Bridge glowing over the water, I still felt a hollow emptiness in my heart. But that emptiness no longer terrified me. It felt like a room that had finally been cleaned out after years of hoarding old garbage. Empty, but clean. Painful, but light. Friday evening, I was reviewing some contracts when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Pam, my old neighbor. She sent a screenshot of a Facebook post by Chloe. In the photo, Chloe was wearing a white maternity dress, her belly huge, standing next to Michael in a hastily decorated small banquet hall. Diane stood beside them, smiling so radiantly, the wrinkles around her eyes deepened. Chloe's caption read, "I finally have a true home. Thank you for giving my baby and me a legitimate family." I stared at the photo for a long time and chuckled. A legitimate family? The words sounded so beautiful, but built upon betrayal, they were nothing more than a white curtain thrown over a moldy wall. Pam sent another text. It was such a rushed wedding. The whole complex is gossiping. The bride was ready to pop, and the groom was forcing a smile. Your ex-mother-in-law keeps bragging about getting a grandson. It's exhausting to listen to. I typed back, "Let them be happy for a little while longer." Pam replied with a sighing emoji and added, "I'm just worried that when this blows up, it's going to be incredibly messy." Lately, I've seen Robert going over to Chloe's place a lot more than before. I set my phone down on the desk, closing my eyes for a few seconds. So the play was continuing, now even decorated with wedding flowers and fake blessings. Michael had sent me an ultrasound photo to brag, and now he was rushing into a wedding to prove to himself that he hadn't made a mistake. The harder he tried to build his castle on sand, the more pathetic the collapse would be. Right then, my office door opened. A man in a light blue button-down shirt walked in holding a file. It was James, the vice president of the West Coast branch, whom I had just met in the morning meeting. He had a calm demeanor and spoke concisely but with great tact. "Sarah, you're still here?" I quickly turned off my phone screen and stood up. I was just finishing up the second part of the budget estimates for the board. I wanted to make sure there were no errors. He placed a hot cup of coffee on my desk. I was walking by and saw the light was still on. "Working hard is good, but don't use work as a hiding place for too long." I froze. The sentence was said lightly, but it hit the exact spot I was trying to hide. Perhaps he noticed my flustered expression, because he smiled. "I don't mean to pry into your personal life. It's just that people who have been through unpleasant things often force themselves to stay busy so they don't have to think." I looked at the steaming coffee, my heart suddenly softening. "Thank you. But I am fine," he nodded. "Fine is good. And if you aren't completely fine yet, that's okay too. No one expects someone who just walked through a hurricane to immediately bloom like a flower." After he left, I sat in silence for a long time. For the first time since the ordeal, there was someone who didn't judge me, didn't pity me, and didn't use my past to force me into a position of weakness. Outside the glass window, San Diego lit up the night, peaceful and unfamiliar. I suddenly realized my life didn't end with my marriage to Michael. There might still be difficult days ahead, but at least from this moment on, I had truly started walking toward my own future. Back in Chicago, that rushed wedding was merely the opening drumbeat for a massive storm quietly rolling in. In the days that followed, I practically buried myself in the new project. The work in San Diego was busier than I expected, but it was precisely this busyness that allowed me to find my rhythm again. In the morning, I went out to the coastal construction site, listening to the distant waves and smelling the damp sand. In the afternoon, I sat in conference rooms discussing designs, tweaking every number on the budget spreadsheet. In the evening, when the city lights came on, I returned to my apartment, cooked a simple meal, and called my mom. As each day passed, the wound in my heart didn't disappear instantly, but it stopped bleeding. I began learning how not to check my phone in fear of a text from Michael. I also learned to smile when walking past a young married couple on the street without feeling a sharp pain in my chest. But the peace didn't last long before Pam called me one afternoon. The moment I picked up, I heard her hushed, secretive voice. Sarah. Chloe had the baby. My hand, holding a pen to sign a document, suddenly paused. Boy or girl? A boy. Diane was thrilled like she struck gold. She posted pictures all over the HOA Facebook group bragging about her heir. But I'm telling you, the baby looks really strange. I stayed silent. Pam, sounding as if she was afraid of being overheard, lowered her voice even more. I know it's hard to tell with newborns, but the bridge of the nose, the mouth, even the narrow eyes. I swear to you, it looks exactly like Robert. Several ladies in the building are already whispering about it. Someone even pointed out that the baby shares 0 features with Michael. I put the pen down, looking out the glass window. Outside, the sky was clear, the sun reflecting off the ocean in a long, brilliant streak. In my heart, there was no sense of vindication like I thought there would be, just a very deep, freezing chill. A newborn child, completely innocent, was being turned by adults into a tool to hide lies, a pawn for status, and a fake source of pride for a rotting family. How did Michael react? He's thrilled, carrying the baby around, showing him off to everyone, even posting in the group chat that he finally knows what it feels like to be a father. It's honestly both funny and pathetic to watch. I replied softly. Let him enjoy it for a little while longer. Not long after hanging up, my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. I didn't even need to guess to know it was Michael. He sent a picture of a red, newborn face swaddled in a blue blanket, along with the text, "Look at him. This is my son. If you had just known your place, he'd be calling you Mom by now." I stared at the tiny face in the photo, my eyes lingering on the corners of the mouth and the bridge of the nose. It really didn't look like Michael. Not even a little bit. A moment later, I texted back, "Are you certain that is your son?" The moment the text delivered, my phone rang. Michael was calling, his voice full of rage. "Sarah, what is that supposed to mean? Don't use your jealousy to curse an innocent newborn baby." I stayed calm. "I am just asking a question. Why are you reacting so strongly? You can't have kids, so you want to curse my happiness, don't you? Let me tell you, I have a child now, and you, even if you run all the way to San Diego, even if you make tons of money, you'll always be a barren woman. If this were in the past, those words would have suffocated me with pain. But now, I only felt pity. Pity for a man tightly holding on to a fake truth, using it to brag to the one person who had once shielded his fragile ego. I spoke very softly. "Michael, I used to think you were pitiful because you didn't know the truth. But now I see you are pitiful because you actively refuse to know it." He went dead silent for a few seconds before snarling, "You are insane. Think whatever you want." I hung up. That evening, James invited me out to dinner to celebrate our project passing the first round of evaluations. The restaurant sat right by the San Diego Bay, the lights shimmering on the water. He didn't ask about my personal life. He just told a few funny stories about his early days in the industry, making me laugh out loud for the first time in a very long time. As the meal was winding down, he looked at me, his voice deep and warm. "Sarah, I don't know how heavy your past is, but I can see you are trying very hard to live with dignity. That is worth much more than pretending you've never been hurt." I looked at him, my heart suddenly softening. Some people walk into your life like a hurricane, but others just quietly place a lantern beside you. They don't force you to walk immediately. They just want you to know there is still a road ahead. That night, when I got home, I received another text from Pam. "The whole complex is talking now, Sarah. The baby looks more like Robert every day. They won't be able to hide this for much longer." I put the phone down, turned off the light, and stared into the dark. Somewhere very far away, the storm they created had finally produced its first clap of thunder. Since that phone call, I knew Michael had started to waver. A man confident enough to show off his baby to his ex-wife was now likely standing outside a DNA clinic, too terrified to walk in. The irony was palpable. He had been cold enough to force me to accept an illegitimate pregnancy, and he had let his mother insult my fertility. Yet, when the prospect of the truth crashing down on him loomed, he was terrified. But I was no longer living my life waiting for him to wake up. My days in San Diego grew sunnier. The coastal resort project entered its critical phase. I attended back-to-back meetings with James and our partners. He was never overly aggressive, never spoke sweet, empty words, but he was always there when I needed him. When I was exhausted, a hot cup of tea would appear on my desk. When I was stressed because a partner was trying to squeeze our margins, he simply said, "Hold your ground. I've got your back." Just one simple sentence, but it left me stunned for a long time. In my previous marriage, I always had to stand behind Michael to save his face. Now, for the first time, a man was saying he had my back not to hide a mistake, but so I could proudly step forward. That afternoon, after successfully signing the contract, the entire conference room erupted in applause. David called to congratulate me, saying that sending me to San Diego was the right choice. Standing by the window, looking out at the ocean, I suddenly felt my eyes sting. It turned out that walking away from a toxic person only meant losing a burden. What I gained was myself. That evening, James drove me home. When the car stopped outside my apartment, he didn't immediately leave. He turned to me and asked, "Are you free this weekend? I'd like to take you to dinner, and not to talk about work." I looked at him, my heart skipping a beat. "James, you know I'm divorced." My situation wasn't exactly amicable. He smiled, his gaze incredibly direct. "I know you've walked a difficult road, but I have no intention of falling in love with your past. I want to get to know the person you are right now." I didn't answer right away. The night breeze blew through the cracked window, carrying the faint scent of the sea. A part of me was still afraid to trust again, afraid to make another mistake, afraid to open the door to a heart that had just barely scarred over. But another part of me understood that just because I had met a bad person didn't mean I had to turn my back on every good thing in the world. "All right. This weekend, then," James smiled, a very subtle smile, but it was enough to warm my heart. But just as peace was settling in, a cold wind from Chicago blew in. Pam called me on a Sunday morning, her voice frantic. "Sarah, they threw a baby shower and sip-and-see party for the baby and invited half the condo complex down to the lobby banquet room." I put down my coffee cup. Diane was carrying the baby around to every table, showing him off. But anyone with eyes could see he looks exactly like Robert. One of the neighbors even blurted out, "Why does your grandson look just like his other grandpa?" Diane heard it, and her face went completely pale. I asked. He forced a smile, but I saw his hands shaking. And Chloe just kept holding the baby tight against her chest, refusing to let anyone hold him for too long. Robert was there too, looking at the baby with red, teary eyes. Anyone paying attention knew something was deeply wrong. I stayed silent. The final string was pulling tighter and tighter, just a little more pressure, and it would snap entirely. By evening, Michael called again. His voice wasn't arrogant like before. It was hoarse and raspy. "Sarah, tell me the truth. Did you see something between Chloe and Robert back then?" I closed my eyes. He was finally asking the question. "You should ask your wife, not me. You knew, didn't you? You knew this whole time." His voice started to tremble. I could hear the sound of things crashing and breaking on his end, followed by Chloe's panicked screams. "Michael, don't listen to her. She just wants to ruin our family," Michael roared. "Shut up. I just have one question. Why does everyone say he looks exactly like your ex-father-in-law? Why does he look at this baby with more emotion than I do?" The background noise erupted into total chaos. Chloe sobbing, Diane yelling at her son to calm down, the baby wailing at the top of its lungs. I held the phone, feeling strangely cold. The final storm was no longer far away. It had smashed right through their front door, and this time, no one could pretend not to hear it. After Michael's roar, the other end of the line was a mess of chaotic sounds. Chloe's hysterical sobs, Diane simultaneously trying to shush the baby and scold her son, and the sound of Michael slamming his fist against a table, as if trying to unleash all his rage onto inanimate objects. I didn't interject, nor did I hang up right away. I just stood quietly by my window, listening to the fragments of their family shattering to the floor. They had once stood in a united front against me, weaponizing that pregnancy to humiliate me. Now, that very same pregnancy had turned into a blade cutting straight into their own egos. Chloe wailed loudly, "Michael, if you don't believe me, what is the point of me even living? I just gave birth to your child, and you listen to an outsider and doubt me," Michael growled. "Then explain it. Why is everyone saying he looks like Robert? Why?" Diane jumped in, her voice trembling with panic. "Michael, calm down. All newborns look a bit like someone else. Don't listen to the gossip." I let out a very soft laugh. Diane used to be the loudest one, the one who treated that pregnancy like her greatest life achievement. Now, she was the one most terrified of the truth, because once it was proven that the child wasn't her grandson, All the venomous insults she had hurled at me would fly back and smack her right in the face. Michael suddenly called my name. "Sarah, are you still there?" I replied. "I've heard enough. Tell me," he pleaded. "Back when you said I couldn't have children, did you have other proof? Do you still have the original documents?" I looked down at my desk, at the project files laid open, my voice turning icy. "Whether I do or not, go get yourself tested, and you will know. Stop coming to me looking for an answer to your own cowardice." He fell silent. Perhaps that sentence struck the exact wound he was trying so hard to cover. Then he asked, his voice barely a whisper, If the baby isn't mine, would you be happy?" I closed my eyes. Happy? I used to think that the day he was exposed, I would feel vindicated, but now that the day was actually here, I only found it all incredibly cruel and sad. An innocent child dragged into the theatrical lies of adults. A man who single-handedly destroyed his marriage chasing the illusion of a bloodline heir. A mother-in-law who used biology to torment her daughter-in-law, only to end up cradling the ultimate humiliation. I wasn't happy. I just saw him reaping exactly what he had sown. With that, I hung up the phone. That night, Pam sent me a short video clip from the HOA Facebook group. I hesitated for a few seconds before opening it. It was a scene from the Sip and See party. Robert was standing next to the baby stroller, his hands trembling as he touched the baby blanket. Chloe rushed over to pull his hand away, but the way their eyes locked lasted far too long and was far too exposing. A nosy neighbor had accidentally caught the moment on camera and posted it with a half-joking caption. "Not sure if that's the maternal or paternal grandpa, but he sure loves his grandson." Just that one sentence caused the comment section to explode. People agreed the baby looked just like Robert. People brought up Michael's rushed wedding. People gossiped that the family was hiding a massive scandal. Pam texted saying Diane was going crazy, trying to force people to delete the video, but too many had already saved it. The harder she tried to erase it, the more people talked. I set my phone down, a heavy feeling in my chest. This final act of their play had spilled out of their small apartment, down into the courtyard, and into every group chat. The reputation Diane had sacrificed everything to protect was now being dragged through the mud by her own greed. 2 days later, Michael sent me a photo of himself standing outside a medical testing clinic. The message was short. "I'm getting retested." I read it and didn't reply. He had to walk that path alone. Just like years ago, when I stood alone outside the fertility clinic holding his test results, my legs numb, without a single person by my side. That afternoon, James took me to sign a contract with a new partner. On the drive back, noticing my distracted state, he didn't press for details but simply pulled the car over by the Pacific Coast Highway. We both stepped out. The ocean breeze blew fiercely, tangling my hair. He handed me a bottle of water, his voice deep. "Some things take a long time to end, not because we still need them, but because the truth takes time to stand on its own 2 feet. I looked at him, suddenly feeling a lump in my throat. I had thought that just living a good life was enough, but having the past continuously drag me back was exhausting. "Then don't stand through it alone," he said softly. But the hand he placed on my shoulder was steady and firm. I didn't pull away. For the first time in a very long time, I allowed myself to lean on someone else's kindness without feeling like I was betraying my own independence. That night, Pam called again. Her voice was urgent. "Sarah." It blew up. Michael brought the DNA test results home. His face was ghostly white. The minute he stepped into the apartment, the screaming started. "Diane is wailing so loud. It seems the results weren't what they were hoping for." I gripped my phone. Outside my window, the San Diego ocean was pitch black, the waves crashing against the shore like pounding drums. The storm had finally made landfall, and I knew that after tonight, Michael would have no more avenues left to deceive himself. The next morning, before I even left for the office, Pam had sent me a barrage of texts. The first sentence made me freeze for a long time. "The DNA test confirmed Michael is not the biological father." I stared at those words, feeling no vindication. The truth had finally crashed down, but it didn't land softly. It completely pulverized a family that was already rotting from the inside. Pam recounted how the entire floor heard the fight last night. Michael had stood in the middle of the living room holding the DNA results alongside his brand new fertility clinic results, his face white as a sheet. Diane was sitting on the floor, crying and screaming at Chloe, calling her a scam artist. Chloe, clutching the baby, still desperately argued that the clinic documents were forged, that someone was trying to frame her. that someone wanted to ruin her happiness, but this time, her tears couldn't save her. Michael roared. How long did you plan on conning me? I can't even have kids, and you knew that perfectly well, didn't you? Chloe sobbed hysterically. I didn't know. Michael, I swear I didn't know. I only loved you. Diane lunged forward, snatching the papers from her son's hand, reading them over and over before trembling as she asked, Then whose child is this? Who is the father? Pam said the hallway was packed with neighbors by this point. Some tried to tell them to quiet down, others quietly recorded it on their phones. Right at that moment, Robert stepped out of his apartment across the hall. The second he saw the baby crying until his face turned purple, he couldn't hold back and rushed forward to grab the child. Just that one action was all it took. Every excuse Chloe had completely collapsed. Michael looked at Robert's trembling hands cradling the infant, then at Chloe's pale, terrified face, and finally understood everything. He didn't yell anymore. He didn't smash anything. He just stood there, dead and hollow, like a ghost. Perhaps in that exact moment, he truly tasted the agonizing sting of betrayal, the exact same feeling he had forced upon me, yet never once felt guilty about. By noon, Michael called me. I was in my office. Outside, the San Diego sun was blindingly bright. I looked at his name on the screen, hesitated for a few seconds, and answered. Sarah. His voice was wrecked. Just one word, and I almost couldn't recognize the arrogant man who used to stand before me. I know everything now. I stayed silent. I am so sorry. I was an idiot. I wronged you. You suffered all that humiliation for me for years, and I treated you like garbage. Sarah, can you give me another chance? I don't need a kid anymore. I just need you. I looked at the project file in front of me, my fingers calmly turning to the next page. Michael, it's not that you don't need a kid. You just didn't get the kid you thought was yours. He choked back a sob. I am truly, deeply sorry. Sorry for losing me, or sorry you got scammed? The other end was dead silent. That silence was the clearest answer. I smiled faintly, but my heart was ice cold. The day you stood in front of Chloe's door and let your mother call me a barren woman, did you ever imagine this day would come? When you demanded I raise another woman's child, did you ever consider that I am a human being too? He broke down crying. The tears of a man who once hurt me so deeply he left me numb now failed to move a single soft spot in my heart. My mom wants to see you too. She says she was wrong. She wants to apologize to you. No need. A late apology cannot erase the years I was trampled on. Right at that moment, my office door opened. James walked in. Seeing my expression, he paused, didn't ask any questions, and simply stood quietly by my side. Michael seemed to hear the noise and frantically asked, Who is there? Who are you with? I looked at James, then spoke calmly into the phone. Someone who has nothing to do with you, but who knows how to respect me much more than you ever did. Michael's voice instantly tightened. You have someone else? We're divorced. Who I choose to move forward with is none of your business. I don't need your permission. He was gasping for air, as if unable to accept the fact that I had truly walked out of his life forever. But I didn't want to hear another word. Michael, don't ever call me again. You need to sort out your own life. And I have to go live mine. I hung up the phone and powered it off. The room returned to silence. James gently placed a cup of warm water on my desk, his voice deep. Are you okay? I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't try to act tough. Not completely okay. But I will be. He nodded. That's enough. That afternoon, the rumors about Michael's family flooded the condo complex. Chloe was sent packing by her former in-laws, dragging the baby back to her rural hometown in Ohio. Robert was relocated by his family to avoid the scandal. Diane locked her doors and refused to step outside, and Michael took a long leave of absence from work, unable to handle the whispers. A family that had once stood before me so arrogantly had shattered to pieces without anyone else lifting a finger. I listened to it all in silence. My heart harbored no desire for revenge, nor did I want to see them suffer any further. Some people fall into an abyss not because anyone pushed them, but because they dug the hole themselves with their own greed, lies, and cruelty. A year later, I was officially appointed as the director of the Coastal Resort Project. On the day I signed the promotion papers, my mom flew into San Diego to attend the ceremony. She sat in the front row, watching me walk onto the stage to accept my bouquet, her eyes red with tears. Afterward, she held my hands for a long time. My daughter has finally stood back up. I hugged her, laughing as tears streamed down my face. I didn't stand up alone, Mom. You were always right behind me. James was there that day too. After the guests left, he took me for a walk along the beach. The wind blew softly. The waves rolled in as steadily as the rhythm of a new life. He stopped and pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. I looked at him, my heart suddenly racing. Sarah, I can't promise to make you forget your past, because what you went through is part of the woman you are today. But I promise you this. If you want to keep walking forward, I will walk with you, with absolute respect and honesty. I looked at the ring in his hand, then up into those peaceful eyes. I used to think that after my world broke, I would never have the courage to love again. But the human heart is strange. It can be hurt, it can be cracked. But if it meets genuine kindness, it can learn to beat all over again. I nodded slightly. I don't need a man to promise me the world. I just need someone who won't turn me into a joke in my own love story. James slipped the ring onto my finger. Under the sunset, my heart felt as light as if I had just set down the heaviest suitcase of my life. Our wedding was simple but warm. My mom was there. My closest colleagues were there, accompanied by the blue ocean and genuine laughter. No showing off, no trying to prove anything to anyone. Just two people who had weathered storms choosing to hold each other's hands with kindness. A few months later, on a very ordinary morning, I stood frozen in the bathroom holding a pregnancy test with two distinct pink lines. I didn't cry right away. I just placed my hand over my stomach, feeling a very quiet joy weave its way into my heart. When I told James, he hugged me tightly. He didn't shout or make a scene. He just bent down and kissed my forehead. Thank you for letting me be a part of this little family. I leaned against his shoulder, my tears finally falling. They weren't tears of pain, but the tears of someone who had walked through an incredibly long, dark night to finally touch her own dawn. I had been called an incomplete woman. I had been forced to accept a child that wasn't mine. I had been betrayed by the person I loved most. But in the end, a woman's completeness doesn't lie in whether she has a husband or a child. It lies in whether she still knows how to love and respect herself. Lesson 1. In marriage, sacrifice only has meaning when it is given to the right person. If you sacrifice for an ingrate, it just becomes a wound. Lesson 2. Never use children to degrade a woman's worth. Being a mother is sacred, but it is not the sole measure of human dignity. Lesson 3. The truth can be hidden for a time, but it can never be buried forever. Lesson 4. When you have been betrayed to the absolute core, walking away isn't losing. It is how you save your own life. And the final lesson? A decent person will never force you to swallow humiliation to save their pride. Someone who truly loves you will walk through the pain with you, rather than using that pain as a weapon against you. This story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life events. I am sharing it to deliver a meaningful message to the audience. The details and characters are products of the author's imagination. Dear listeners, thank you for staying until the end of the story. I wish you all abundant health, peace, and the wisdom to always value yourselves, no matter the circumstances.